we took a trip to Zapp Con 2025 to take a look at the different comic books available, the artist and artist alley, and much, much more. So stick around as we take a look at everything we experienced at this year's event. So this year we were able to attend Zapp Con number 6, the 2025 edition in Wayne, New Jersey. Now, just to give a little bit of backstory to this before we jump into our time at the event this year, this event is held by, in my opinion, one of the top comic book shops in all of New Jersey, really any comic shop I've personally ever been to, and my kind of personal go-to shop whenever I'm looking for new comics and even your vintage classic comics as well, and that is Zapp Comics. They have 2 locations in New Jersey. They have one in Wayne, and they also have one in Manalapan, New Jersey. The one I typically go to is the Wayne event, and they also attend tons of different Comic-Cons throughout the year. They show up, of course, to New York Comic-Con. They show up to local small shows and everything kind of in between. So I have come across Ben, who is one of the owners. I've come across him a lot in my time of comic book collecting in this area of the country, and I've bought a lot of different books from them over the years. And they have been doing their own personal Comic-Con called Zapp Con. This year was the 6th time that they've done it, and I think it's a nice little event. Now, it's focused just on them. They are the only comic book vendor at the event, but the way that works is, of course, they still have a setup where they have their wall books, their big, high-priced, really sought-after books. They have a whole lineup of boxes of dollar books or books that are 50% off that are all available for you to go through at your pace, take a look, add those additional pieces to your collection, continue runs, start runs, kind of have all those different opportunities for comic book collectors. But really the focus of this event is focused mainly on the artist alley, which was the kind of main piece that this room was focused on. You have different rows of these great artists that have worked on independent projects, artists that have worked on Marvel projects, DC projects, and everything kind of in between there in the comic book world, and even outside of comic book world and just the art world of things. So it's really, really great to see these artists available to have a conversation with, be able to purchase their art, and in even some cases, people were getting commissions of different art pieces from the different artists available at the event. Some other cool things that they had there, they had a gaming section where they had classic video game consoles set up that you could play different games. I, of course, had to take some time to go to the Nintendo 64, which was my first system I got as a kid. I actually still have my Nintendo 64, but I thought I'd take it as an opportunity. They had an emulator cartridge where you can have a whole bunch of different Nintendo 64 games on there. I played a little bit of GoldenEye. I was really terrible at it because even though I played it as a kid, it's been a very long time since I've used that controller. And of course, as those of you who have played a Nintendo 64 before, you know how drastically different the feel of that controller is compared to modern different consoles. So trying to get used to the controls again to that was a little difficult, but it was still fun to do that. But they had different challenges throughout the day where people could do different battles with, I believe there was Batman Arkham Asylum, and other kind of classic games where there were tournaments, and whoever won had a various different amounts of prizes given out during these classic game tournaments throughout the day. So that was really nice to see and have available to those outside of just the artist piece. We talked about the artist alley section. And then another thing they had, of course, was panels, because you can't have a Comic-Con without panels. And they had different panels starting off right in the morning at 11 o'clock. The event started at 10, so starting at like 11 o'clock in the morning, all the way down to the end of the event. The event ended at 6 p.m. that day. They had events going on and panels about different types of topics. They had people talking about different random books that were pulled out of a box. They talked about the history of Zapp Comics. They talked about other types of topics in the world of comic book collecting, tips and tricks from people who have other podcasts within the comic book collecting community, the collecting community in general. So it was great opportunities for those who were there to listen in and get a little bit of insight and have some fun too, because we're actually going to talk about the one panel I was able to attend, which I thought was great and a lot of fun, and we actually had some takeaways from that as well. But that's just kind of a basic overview of things. It was just a one-day event. Like I said, this is the 6th time that they've done it. I do have to say that I truly appreciate and shout out to Lou over at Critical Hit Tattoo. He reached out to me on Instagram and offered me a complimentary ticket to attend the event for us to do some coverage, some video, put together some stuff. So I do want to give a shout out to Lou for that opportunity. Thank you so much. I loved my time there, and it was also great speaking with you as well. So you can check them out, Critical Hit Tattoo. They are partnered with Zapp and helping them put together some of these things, and allowed us some time to go to an event that I was actually kind of thinking of going to even before, because like I mentioned, I love Zapp. I've done a lot of business with them over the years of buying things, seeing them at shows, having quick conversations with them. So it was still something that was in the back of my mind, but when they reached out and offered to kind of go to the event and cover some of it, it was a no-brainer. I thought it was a great opportunity. So I'm really, really happy that they did reach out in that case. So that's the general overview. What I'm going to talk about next is some of my experiences at Zapp Con and some of the things that we picked up at the event. Now, I got to come out and be completely honest. I actually did not purchase any comic books at this event. I ended up not purchasing anything, and I got to talk a little bit about why I personally didn't purchase any comic books. Now, the event started at 10 o'clock in the morning on the Saturday, the one day they were having the event, and I showed up maybe 10 minutes after the event had officially started. I went in, picked up my badge, and of course, right when you walk in and you pick up your badge is a big wall they have set up of all the wall books, the high-priced, really sought-after books, the big ones, the heavy hitters, of course, are on there, and of course, some lower-end keys as well. But your key books are up there on that wall right when you first walk into the door. And of course, I spent a lot of time staring at those books, looking at the different prices. Zapp does a fantastic job of having nice, clear price tags on all of their books that are on the wall. Nice big ones for no matter what your eyesight may be. Because I gotta tell you, I'm just a little tangent here. So many Comic Cons I've gone to over the time I've been collecting comic books, and the amount of times I've had to ask somebody to say, hey, can you take that thing down? What's the price? How much is this? What can you work on in this case? Now, of course, the haggling piece, that's just part of it. But the thing that gets kind of annoying is, especially at those bigger shows, is constantly having to ask to take this down, take this down, take this down, take this down, and not just having a price on it that I can see from distance and say, okay, I see that this book over there is $200. So in my mind, I already go, okay, it's $200. What is a price that maybe I can offer, and then see if they're willing to work with me on it? Instead of having to go through this kind of back and forth of, oh, instead of it being, I thought this was going to be a couple $100s, they hand it to me and say, oh, actually, it's like $2,000. And then I have to say, oh, thank you so much for letting me look at this, but actually put this back. So instead of kind of having that back and forth, Zapp does a fantastic job of really making that clear. This is not just a thing they do at their show. They do this at all the shows and even at their store. I think mainly because they have a store, I think that helps them kind of really focus on that type of stuff. But that's just a tangent, but I gotta call that out. Just a really a plus and a positive of working with Zapp. And I'm looking at all these different books, and even though I got there only 10 minutes after the event already opened, the vultures had swarmed. And they already kind of gobbled up all the books that I could have possibly afforded at the time, because of course there were tons of books on that wall. that I would absolutely love to buy right then and there and add it to my collection, books that I don't currently have, or even upgrades to books that I have and books in better condition and such forth. But I can't do it at this time for the prices. Now, their prices are extremely fair, and the prices they're asking for are in line for where the market is right now. Even though, of course, that market fluctuates over the years, especially recently. Even with that, I gotta say that Zapp is consistently fair when it comes to their pricing. That's the best way I can really say it. And even with that, there's books that, even if it's the fairest price out there, it's still going to be something that is a little crazy. And that's just because of the book's market. There's nothing to do with them. That's just the book's market. So the books that were left over were books that I would have loved to purchase, but just can't swing it at the current moment. But it was fantastic to look at them. And so there were a couple that I almost went for, but I ended up not purchasing any books at the event, which is perfectly fine. I did actually purchase some other things, which I'll show you guys in a minute. But I did not buy any books with no fault to Zapp their own. It just didn't line up this time. But I do know it will line up sometime soon. Hopefully this year we'll get a nice, good show and get some nice books into the collection in 2025. But outside of the comic book piece, I did mention I did purchase some other things at the show that were not comic book. They're comic book adjacent, but not actually comic books. Like I mentioned, of course, the main kind of focus, I would say, of the event was the Artist Alley that took up the most space in the room. Of course, since Zapp was the only comic book vendor there, it kind of made sense that the majority of the focus be on these wonderful artists. And so I went around, looked at all their art, saw some fantastic stuff, but there were two artists that I purchased items from. The first person I actually purchased something from was Ian Glaubinger, and he is somebody who actually, funny story, I went up, I was looking at his art, going through his stuff. He had fantastic kind of really vintage style posters of different geeky products, and the piece that I got actually has to do with New Jersey specifically. But the funny story too is I didn't even realize while I was looking at his art, I was wearing the same Roosevelt shirt that I'm wearing right now. The company Roosevelt's that makes these great button-down shirts that I wear all the time now. And he started speaking to me when I was purchasing the items from him. He was actually letting me know that he was part of the team that designed this specific shirt that I'm wearing, this Marvel Roosevelt shirt. So he was letting me know that he was part of that team, and he was giving me a little insight about the design of it and how they kind of worked with Marvel to figure out how it's going to look and how the design's going to be. So that was really, really cool. I didn't realize when I was talking to him and looking at his art and purchasing something that he was actually involved with this shirt, one of my actually favorites in my Roosevelt's collection. So that was really, really cool. But the piece that I got from him actually technically two pieces. It's 5 pieces, but one is like a 4-pack and then a separate item. But the first one I'm going to show you here is kind of a vintage ad of the White Mana's hamburgers in Hackensack, New Jersey. Like I said, he had a couple different vintage ad looking pieces for restaurants and locations in the New Jersey area. And this is just one of my favorite restaurants in all of the state. It's actually been a very long time since I've gone there. But if you haven't heard of White Mana, they make kind of the little slider burgers on a grill right in front of you. I would say, okay, White Castle is the fast food version of it, but these are actual hand-pressed little slider burgers. They put them right there with the onions, and then they put them on the little potato rolls for you to eat, and you can buy them in a whole sack of burgers. They're fantastic. If you haven't been there before, I highly recommend, if you ever come to that area of New Jersey, I highly recommend going to White Mana. So because I myself and my family have a connection to going there when I was growing up, because I grew up in the vicinity of Hackensack, I thought that was a great thing to get. I'm going to get a nice frame for it, put it up somewhere in my house. So I thought that was fantastic. And then he had these little kind of sets of 4 little square art pieces. And the one that I purchased were these little VHS sets of classic movies in different genres from the 1980s. So you have like your horror films, you have your comedy, your sci-fi, your action, all of that. So you have those classic films in those genres from the 80s shown as these little VHS tapes in that vintage kind of art style. So I thought those were fantastic. That was the first piece of art that I purchased. Those two things. And like I mentioned, it was great to have that connection to the shirt that I was actually wearing and the one I have on right now, and that artist as I was having a conversation with him. Now, the other artist that I purchased something from, this is something really unique and cool. I've seen people do art by using some of these techniques, but I've never seen it used for this specifically. And what it is that this specific artist would take comic books and the art that's within those books, and the kind of thing that might be considered sacrilege to some collectors out there is he rips apart those books and he cuts out, like with an X-Acto knife or any other types of like little kind of surgical precision, cuts out the panels or the characters of those different from the actual comic book itself, and then uses the pieces that he cuts out and makes them a part of actual sketchbooks. So he hand binds himself sketchbooks, and that is Albert Loves Comics. He is on Instagram. I know he has a pretty good following on social media, showing the process of how he puts these books together. But he had a whole bunch of different books. This was actually the first ever show that he ever actually sold these books at. So he has a presence on social media, but he was actually letting me know that this was the first time he actually did a show where he was selling these books. And I think he's going to do fantastic if he shows up at other shows after this one. I looked at a bunch of different books he had left over by the time I was looking in his collection. And the one that I went with is this one right here, which has the X-Men on it. And it has the brand new team for when the new team came into play with Wolverine, Storm, Colossus. You have Nightcrawler on here. And then you have the classic team up there in the back. This is fantastic. I love this. And the great thing too is, like I mentioned, what these are sketchbooks. So all these are these high-grade sketch pages. And you can, if you're an artist yourself, of course, you can go and use these to sketch your art. You can just use it as a regular notepad if you want to use it for work or for whatever else purposes. I saw a couple people buying these and then bringing them to the artist and getting commissions. So getting the art actually drawn into these books. That's what I actually think I'm going to do with this. Is that I didn't get any art this time, but I think I'm going to start bringing this to different conventions I attend throughout the year and moving forward past 2025 as well, and start getting different pieces in here. Something I actually want to ask you guys, get your feedback. I was thinking of, because the cover is X-Men, is kind of sticking to X-Men characters on the pages in here. But what's your thoughts? Maybe we open it up to just Marvel in general. I don't know. Because everybody knows I'm here. My favorite superhero is Spider-Man. X-Men is the number 2, I would say. I put the X-Men in a number 2 spot, even though that encompasses a lot of people. But I would put Spider-Man as my number 1. X-Men is kind of the next place that I jump to after that. So we'll see. So let me know your thoughts. What do you think? Stick to X-Men because of the cover, or do I throw in other Marvel characters that I love in there as well? Who knows? I want to get everybody else's thoughts too. But those are the different pieces that I was able to pick up from the artists that were able to attend the event. Like I said, there were tons of other artists that had fantastic work. I loved looking at all the stuff and seeing what they had available. Just didn't work out that I purchased anything else at this time, but I'm really happy with the purchases that I was able to get for that. Now, there is one other piece of art that I was able to pick up and get, and it was completely free. I didn't have to pay anything for the other piece of art, and that's going to be our next topic, and that's what we're going to do as our last piece of this recap video, and that is talking about the panel that we were able to attend. Now, to kind of wrap things up and talk about the last piece of our time at Zapp Con 2025, and that is the panels. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I was only able to have the time to attend one panel at the event, and that panel was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. It's one of my favorite panels I think I've ever gone to at any show, whether it be a small show like this or those big gigantic New York Comic Con panels. But what this was a panel called Odd and Obscure Villains, and it was run by the moderator, James Michael. And the way the event worked is that the moderator had a list and images of really super strange and obscure villains throughout comic book history. And on the panel were 3 artists. So 3 artists from the Artist Alley came over, and what would happen is that the moderator would give a detailed description of the villain. He would show the image of the villain to only us, the audience. So only the audience would be able to see what that villain actually looked like. And then the artist, the 3 different ones, had to imagine what that villain looks like just based on the description alone, and then draw it within 5 minutes. So you can already tell it's going to be a lot of fun, especially for some of these really super obscure villains that I had no clue who they were. And it was so much fun. You had 3 different artists, as I mentioned. You had J.P. Buzio, you had Dave Fowler, and you also had Nick Capone. So if I'm butchering anybody's last name, I truly apologize. But I want to give you guys a shout out from there. And it was great. You had Armless Tiger Man. You had the Slug, or just Slug, I believe is his name. You had Brimstone Love, was one of the villains that was brought up in that event. You had Ruby Thursday, another villain that I didn't know about, super obscure Marvel villain. It was a lot of fun, and audience participation. We got to choose and vote a couple times which villain we were going to be presenting to the artists. And then, of course, when they were done with each of their drawings for each of the different villains, we would then, as the audience, we had tickets, and we would go up and put a ticket in the bucket in front of that artist. And at the end, they tallied the votes and chose which person had the most votes overall, over all the villains that they drew throughout the panel event. Really a lot of fun. I can't really say anything more than that. It's just that it was so much fun, lots of laughter, and you could tell that the audience loved it because it was one of the most attended panels I saw throughout the morning, and I think as people saw that people were having fun, more people started showing up and sitting in the bleachers to watch. So really great. I really hope that they continue. I know that they said that they've done this panel for a couple years at this event so far, but I really hope they continue it because I think it's a lot of fun and a great way to get people engaged with the event from there. But the great thing, and I mentioned earlier about the panel, I got another piece of art that was completely free. One of the funniest things is that at the end of the event, once everything was done, once they named a winner, who actually Nick Capone was the one who was named the winner. He had the most votes by only 3 votes. So there was only 3 votes that got him to win. So it was pretty close between the 3 of them. And once the event was over and they told everybody, thank you so much for attending, we're going to move on to the next panel. They put all the art out that was used throughout the event. And they said, if anybody wants the art, it's first come, first serve. Grab whatever you want that's left over at the table by the time you get up here. So everybody kind of rushed up and grabbed whatever pieces they wanted based on what the different artists drew. And I actually was able to grab one of them, and I grabbed it from the artist who actually won the entire event, Nick. And I gotta grab this piece over here. And what it is that one of the villains that they went over was the Slug, or just, I keep saying but it's just Slug. He's a super obese mob boss that can't get around. He has a special vehicle that takes him around, and he just is one of those characters that, why is he a thing? He's not the Kingpin, because Kingpin actually is agile. He's a big guy, but he's agile. No, the Slug just can't move, other than being on this special vehicle that kind of shoots him around places. So everybody drew those. They drew in different ways, whether they took the name literal or they listened to a lot of the different descriptions that the moderator used was from there. But that was the piece I was able to grab from Nick, who won. And this is the piece right here. This is the slug. This is how Nick interpreted the slug on the description that the moderator gave. I think it's a lot of fun. It's silly. My family who was with me, my aunt and uncle were with me at the event. My aunt grabbed the one that was Ruby Thursday, that villain. She grabbed the art from that one. But I grabbed the slug. I thought this was very silly, very funny. And at the end of the day, it's for something that's drawn in only 5 minutes, I think is pretty great. And I think it's a great memory. It's a wonderful memory to look back on the event. I'm going to find a nice frame to put it in so that's protected. I'm going to put it in one of my archive folders that I use for my autographs right now while I try to find something great to put it in. But like I said, at the end of the day, it's a great memory to look back on my time at the event and one of the best panels I think I've ever attended at all these shows. So I know I've talked on forever and ever and ever on this video. This is a very long video. I truly appreciate all you who have stuck around this long to hear me ramble on about my time at Zapp Con 2025. But for those of you who have stuck around this long, I hope you took away that if those of you who are in the kind of tri-state area of the United States, New York, New Jersey area, if you're in that area, I highly recommend checking out Zapp Comics, whether it is checking out their website, checking out their actual locations in New Jersey. Like I mentioned, they have 2 of them there. And they do this event every year. So next year, usually around similar amount of time of the year. Right now is the end of March. But keep an eye out on their social media pages for when they announce the next time they're going to do an event like this. I highly recommend taking a day and at least a couple hours, going to check it out, seeing the artists, seeing what books they have, checking out the cosplay, and all the different events that they are able to offer the next time they have this event. Once again, I do want to give a shout out, as I mentioned earlier, to Lou at Critical Hit Tattoo for inviting me out to the event. I truly, truly appreciate that. And I truly appreciate every single one of you who have stuck around and watched this entire video. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like it, subscribe to our channel, hit that bell notification to be notified when we post brand new content, and let us know in the comments below if you like these types of videos. If you personally are a comic book collector, have you visited Zapp Comics? If you live in the New Jersey area, let us know below. Thank you so much for watching our video today and for continuing to support our channel. And as always, keep on collecting.